You're gonna.
So, first of all, yay! I'm so glad you're here, Rochelle, to be on the podcast. And we were already starting to talk, so I was like, oh my gosh, we better record this because I feel like it's important to share what we were about to talk about. And we were saying how we haven't spoken in years because
Yes.
I've been through so much. And she's like, I feel like our guides put us through this hell so we could get to the next level. And what did you say about your son?
Yeah, so my son got really sick in 2021. He was diagnosed with Crohn's, and but it was during COVID, so it was brutal. I actually don't know how I made it through 2021 because I couldn't get into the hospitals enough because he was 21 years old. I had to leave him there, and he got to a point where I thought he was going to die because he had gone down to literally 82 pounds. And he's not, like that's crazy. And in Canada, the rules were so strict. And so I just kept praying, please let me in. I got to see him. And so it was brutal that whole entire year. I really don't know how I coped. And I actually, like we were saying before, you took a year off. I took a year off. I gave up. I was like, I cannot inspire others right now because I'm just trying to figure my own shit out. Like I can't, how can I inspire others? But you know what? As I said at the beginning, that inspiration now, a couple of years later, me being able to kind of like my son's back to his normal healthy weight. We've got it under control. He's doing amazing. A little bit of medicine as well as natural herbs. I'm able to inspire and share that with people on my podcast and people in audio rooms and people all over the world to say, you know what, when life hands you a bowl of shit, you got to learn how to roll with it because it's extremely hard. Like there were days that were really hard for me to get up and like, oh my God, what can I do as a mom? What can I do? How can I make this better? Oh, can I help you? How can I fix this? I couldn't fix it because it was beyond something as a mom. And as a mom that you can fix, you can only fix so much. And so I left it in the hands of capable people in not one, not two, but 4 hospitals before they figured out what was actually wrong with him. And I can't even tell you how many visits. So it was like, I remember at one point I asked one of my friends who I said, can you just like tap in and find out what's going on? Because I'm so scared for him because I think he's going to give up. And when you do, and anybody who knows who's a paramedic, when the brain says, that's it, I'm dying, I've had enough, I give up. That's it. The whole body shuts down. And I said, please. And she said, yeah, he's contemplating ending it because he couldn't handle the pain anymore. And I couldn't as a mom. I've managed to get through these last 2 years and not lose my shit. So I'm a little emotional now because, yeah, I go back, I think about it and I think, wow, how did I make it through? But yeah, but the universe does that. It puts these things in us. And I believe, and I wrote an article in this magazine out of LA called The Best Holistic Life. And in it, I wrote how important it is to take those moments, to be so present in those moments, like we were as little kids, taking that dandelion with all the little wisps and blowing it and watching all those wisps go everywhere and know that whatever you imagine, whatever you wish is going to happen and not give up and not worry about not being there or here, just be in the now moment because that's all you have. And that's what I think that year taught me. And now I'm so present with my kids. I just hug them and tell them I love them in the weirdest times because I just want to be present with them. And they're both in their 20s, but I still tell them, right? Because, it's crazy. But yeah, I don't know how I did it.
So I get goosebumps all over because it's so relatable to me.
Yeah.
You know, um, when you were saying I went through a lot and that I step back, you step back, but you know what? And I'm guessing it's the same for you as my audience, my followers, and my friends showed up more than they ever did during that time. They reached
Yeah.
out to me, they messaged me. I got gifts in the mail from people
Mm-hmm.
that I've never met. because they saw me, because I shared. I stopped
Mm,
working, but I shared my pain and my struggles. And they grew through that. Like you were saying, like that, I used that dark moment, I just shared it, and it really truly inspired people.
yeah.
I need it.
I didn't share because it was really hard for me just to cope. But the people I did share with, there was a few people in the community. Um, we're sending Reiki, we're supporting me, we're praying for him. My good friend, she tapped in and helped him kind of move through that dark energy. Like I tapped into a few, but a very small amount because it was it was just so hard. Like I just didn't want to share with anybody. Because every time I would talk about it, and you just saw a few minutes ago, could you imagine in the actual moment, like I was just a bubbling mess, like I just blah,
Mhm.
blah, blah. So for me to even talk about it was just too hard. It was like
Yeah.
if I talk about it, I'm just gonna not be able to like make it to the next day. So let's just not talk about it and let me just see what I can do each day to get through it, to be there for him, to support my other daughter or my daughter, because she was at home and seeing all of this, and she, you know, trying to help her not feel like she was being left to the side, you know, because every bit of energy went to him, right?
Yeah.
So, but the people that did show up, like you said, the people that I asked to show up showed up and were there for me and sent me, you know, let me do Reiki healing, let me help him, let me give you this, let me do that, you know. So the people that you want will show up in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you have this transformation. Like you said, the universe is like, here you go. I remember going, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. My mom died, my dog died, then my mom died, then my other dog died, then my husband died. Like, stop it.
That was a lot,
And then
frankly. I don't.
my health, and then I was mad at the medical community. And look, I hear it. People that can't see, I have my cup of celery juice right here. I had to, figure out how to keep going.
Yeah, it is, it's really hard because it's one of those things where you're like, how do you do, like how do you keep going and getting up? And truth be told, I will tell you, I mean, it I'm not one big for medication, so I was trying to source, and this of course is not this is for me personally, I was trying to source something to control my anxiety because it was off the charts. So I actually started microdosing mushrooms, just small amounts to test it to see. And it did help me, just small amounts. It got me through that so I could get up every day and not feel like I was going to lose my shit.
Yeah.
And just for that, I probably from 2021 to the end of 2022, and then I stopped. But it was just what I needed because I had gone into Clubhouse, I had talked to tons of people, I had listened, and I said, oh, let me try this. Let me try a really small amount. And then I increased it to where I felt comfortable. And that got me through it. And it does. And after I did all the research and watched a bunch of stuff and documentaries, I realized that it really did help me because
Oh,
the
yeah.
last thing I wanted to do was to take something medical that would just make me a zombie. I just wanted to be able to function without having major anxiety every day and crying, right?
Yeah.
And feeling helpless. So yeah, I mean, but as I said earlier, it's taught me to be so present because that's the only moment that matters is the now moment.
Yeah. And that is 100% true when we're talking in the spiritual, world. We
Mm.
really are in this present moment. That's all there is. So now you're back, or I shouldn't say back because we're not going that way, right? But now you're what are you doing now? Tell me.
Well, it took me a while. I didn't come back right away. I did spend a lot of 2022 doing physical stuff, trying to like just figure out what I was doing because I had sold my business. I was still, you know, didn't know what I was going to do and wasn't sure if I could come back. And it was actually a podcast that I went on to speak on that at the time I had talked to someone, a guy I was chatting with, and he said, listen, if you feel really crappy when you go to talk on the podcast, then you know it's not for you. He goes, but if you feel really good, then you know you got to get back into it. Because I had dropped the podcast and everything. So I got back on And I realized, yeah, this is where I need to be. Yeah. And that was kind of my mojo, got me back in the rhythm of things. I was in New York for 6 weeks. So I was there doing some other stuff, is like, doing some stuff on a house with some friends and design. So I stayed there, and then I started getting kind of my rhythm back. And then I ended up coming back at the end of 2022 towards the summer, fall, and collaborated with a bunch of people that I knew on LinkedIn, and spent a year collaborating with these amazing women and writing books. And then from there, it just blew up. It was like the right people started showing up. I was offered, and I didn't try it for a year. It wasn't my thing. I worked with a TV station out of Atlanta and put all my podcast on that, wrote 3 books, and yeah, like just connected with so many amazing people, got my podcast back up, connected with more amazing people on Gaia, Georgia Jean and Jamie Price, and also the lovely Gita Rose. And so just had some incredible connections there that I had met from 2020, but then I said, come back on, I want to have you back again. And just all these great people started showing up in my life. And that's where I ended up deciding to go a little bit into light language, and was activated in 2022 and met my soul sisters, Lily Lee and Dina Fortune. And the 3 of us realized that we were all ancients, and we had all come together, and we were here to really support humanity in different ways, by being open to the playfulness of where we could go, being recognizing how powerful we were, and then letting the healing come in. And I was a little shy to it first, but these girls were great, and we wrote that book, The Journey of Transformation, which is out now on Amazon. So it was channeled messages from myself, channeled art from Dina, and channeled light codes from Lily. So
Wow. And what's it called again?
The Journey of Transformation.
I love this. So can you talk a little bit more about how you were introduced to light language and how that came about for you?
Sure. So in 2020, I had Jamie Price on my podcast, was very intrigued, read her book, but because of COVID, I wasn't able to travel to Sedona. So I kind of was waiting for her to do an online thing. It didn't happen in the time that I wanted. My son got sick in 21, so I just gave it all up. 2022, I met another lady who was an activator. And when you just know. And I met her. I knew instantly. I paid to get activated. And she was like, oh, yeah, they've been waiting for you. They've been waiting for you. And I was like, oh, wow. She goes, and there were tons of guides in the room. And she said to me, yeah. So and I knew that she wasn't, BSing me, because I had, if you remember Laura Masters, Laura had said to me back in 2019, you are Palladian, light being, avian, and elemental. And so I just kind of left it there. So when I met Deb confirmed I was Fae, Palladian, blue avian. And so that was like, so of course she started teaching me, she activated me, and I could kind of got me started trying to talk a little, like that first session we did. And then the second session, just to get me to kind of get into the resonance of it. But when I met Lily and Dina, who already were speaking dragon and mantis and I don't know, about 10 other dialects, it was like all of a sudden and Lyran, it started to come about like in craziness. And I said, you know what, we have to go to Manhattan. Dr. Nupi, this other woman, we're meeting her there for this big event. And I said to the ladies, come with me. And it was on November 11th. And and it was like 11/11, and we showed up in Manhattan, all 3 of us, and it was everywhere we went. We constantly would see, those repeating numbers, and I knew, and that's when I really started to like speak different dialects, more dialects. Lyran started coming out, and dragon and gnome and fae, and I was kind of nervous to say it, but then I would sit in the car with the Lily on the way back, and she's like, okay, speak. And so I would speak, and she go, this is dragon. And she goes, and that is either red dragon, or she said something else dragon. And I was like, oh, and then gnomes started coming up, a gnome and fae whenever I was out in walking my dog. So she said, why don't I introduce you to my friend, Chris out of the UK? And he did the whole thing on my name and everything. And he said, yeah, you're an ancient. And he's like, you've been around for this many millions, trillions of years, and you came in at this time, and you were a dragon, and you were fae, and this. And I was like, holy crap. And then that's when we three of us realized that all three of us were ancients, and that we had made this agreement to come here to do this, to share light language with humanity, to help them understand that through their own soul language, they can heal, that through the light codes, they can heal, that, and through my channeled messages in the book, which, by the way, I channeled back in 2019 after I got divorced from my husband. I sat there and channeled these messages for 6 months. And Dina shared with me, she had painted the paintings back in 2019. And we literally matched the paintings with the channeled messages. And it was like easy peasy, lemon squeezy. It was like, there was no like, oh, I don't know, maybe, it was like they just matched perfectly. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but
this is so fascinating to me. So, what is the activation? Is that kind of like a Reiki attunement or something along those lines?
I guess it's similar to it. I don't know if it's a Reiki attunement, but the guides come in and she just opens you up to receive the codes for you to be activated for the light language, so that you're open to speaking it, right? Because it's in every one of us, right? It's just tapping into it. Yeah. And then once she activate, like I remember at one point she said, okay, it's going to get a little warm, and I could feel like my whole body heating up. And I was like, okay, well, it's not that hot outside, but I was just like boiling. And she said, yeah, it's going to get warm. And I could feel like swirls in my sort of my solar plexus. And even when I first started though, Brandeline, it was just like it was like baby steps. It was like, I wasn't sure what the hell I was saying. I had no idea. I was just blah, 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 blurbing stuff out. But I still don't know exactly what I'm saying, but here's what I'll tell you, is when I'm talking to someone or I'm speaking, and I did this to my friend, Dr. Nupi in Manhattan, the emotion and the feeling behind the light language, there is no words, because light language is more expansive than human language could ever be. It's the emotion. And as I spoke it to her, she started to cry, and so did I, because she knew what I was saying through the emotion. And same with Lily. When I met Lily for the first time, and she was here in Toronto, and I literally got out of the car and I walked around and I started crying, and I just started speaking Lyran to her. And she knew. She said what I got was, oh my God, it's been so long. Our souls finally meet. It's about time. I love you, right? And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I was feeling inside. So it's more of an emotion, and the vibration of the sound that's coming out is carrying the energy to the other person of the emotion and the feeling you're feeling, whether it's love, frustration, happiness, whatever that emotion is. And you and I both know that everything is energy, right?
Yeah, so that was going to be my next question, is because you've taken the Awaken program like a billion years ago. When we do the psychic stuff too, right? Wouldn't it be like you're able to sit in their energy? Like, I don't know. So
what do you mean?
The words, you're sending energy, but like if we do a psychic reading, we're sitting in their energy, so we could feel them and we know everything about them because we're in their energy if we're doing a psychic reading. But what you're doing is projecting out an emotion.
Yeah, you're talking to them. So both times with both of those people, or even when I'm walking in nature, it's like I can't physically see anything, but I can feel there's fae all around me and gnomes. And right. So I will flip back and forth between fae and gnome. And it's like, I know now in my head what I'm saying to them. It's just the energy and the vibration is what it's coming out and saying, right? So if you listen to the best person I can say, if you listen to Jamie Price, she speaks Lyran because she works with the Lyran's council, but it's it's a vibration and it's a healing. So Lily too, Lily will send out codes of healing. That's not really, I can speak it, but I'm not at that place where I want to heal people with it. I'm more of, I will speak to you. I can feel from your emotion what's going on inside of you and send my emotion and love to you. That's probably the best way I could describe it.
Thank you. That made me wrap my head around it. So you're tapping in, you could feel me, and then you could send me an emotion to like give me an adjustment or an energetic adjustment or something like that. So, okay, now here's my next question, because I know everybody that's listening is wondering the same thing. How do you decipher between these different languages? Because you're talking about Lyrian, you're talking about Fae, Dragon, all that.
Well, there's Fae in you. So
For
I can already feel it. So
sure.
wait. I can feel it. It's coming up because whenever I feel that push on my throat, I know that they want me to. Okay, so I'm just gonna say it because as you've always said, don't hold it back. Just let it go. Like what did you used to say? You used to say
Trust and
don't
allow.
trust and allow, but I used to say don't read the mail, just deliver it. So I'm just gonna
Yes.
deliver it. So this is for you, Brandeline. That was Gnome and Faye. I don't know. I feel like they're saying, we love you. You're here. We finally see that you are opening up. Something that's the emotion I get from it. Wow.
Yeah, I got a lot of playfulness. Like, we can't wait to play with you.
Yes. That's kind of like they were excited. They came through, like I could feel the Faye coming through when I was talking to you because they were like, excited because everything is energy. So even though we're not next to each other, the energy is still there between us.
So, so not everybody knows this story, and I don't know if you know this story, but the main reason I had a spiritual awakening was because of the fairy realm.
Wow.
It wasn't a spirit guide, it wasn't an angel. I was in the freaking woods, and I was like, I know now what it was, but then I didn't. I went through a portal, and the air changed and everything. I could still breathe, but it felt like there was no air. Everything was just like this. And then I was like, what is going on? This is the very beginning for me, right? And I was like, there's things looking at me. And I could feel them everywhere in the woods. And I didn't even know that fairies were real. I thought they were make-believe. So then I ended up, trying to discover what was happening. I wanted to know what this experience was. And here I am today.
See, we were supposed to meet because I could feel them pushing to say something to you. And I was like, the first thing I got was fairy, like right away, fairy. And then gnome came in slightly behind me. Like it changed, if you noticed, right? Just a little tiny bit towards the end. And that's gnome coming in and saying, we're here too. Don't forget about us, kind of feeling. That was what I got.
Okay. So, I mean, you guys can't make this shit up. Here's the thing though. You can't make this stuff up, right? So
no.
I have a spirit guide. He's a gnome and his name is Thomas.
Oh my God.
And so I'll just tell a story really quick because I don't know. I tell this story so much on my podcast because it comes up. But so I started teaching, psychic and mediumship development, and I was developing still. And I was clairvoyant, and I was out by there was moss by the tree.
Yes.
See this image of this like gnome in my head. Or maybe that's not what it meant. Yeah, that's not when it happened. It actually, I woke up because it happened multiple times, and then I finally was like, okay, fine. Okay, fine, you're real. I woke up and he was standing by my freaking bed.
Yeah.
And he was like 3 feet tall. I always thought gnomes were like this big. And there probably is some gnomes that are like 2 inches big or whatever. But he was like 2 or 3 feet tall. And he was like a teenager gnome. He had suspenders on, right? And he had this little beard, like not an old man beard, like a little beard. And he was gone like that. And I stayed there looking at nothing now, right? Because he was there and then he wasn't. And I was like, that was the weirdest shit I've ever seen.
You cannot make this up. That is crazy. And both of
so,
those came through.
so
That's
then,
like, oh
so
wow.
then like my hair's itching and everything is probably him. So then I seen him in my mind's eye in the moss, right? And then I was teaching at this point. One of my very first students, she drew a freaking picture. She goes, there's a little man next to you. And she drew a picture and it was a freaking gnome. And so I'm like 3 times, right? So then now he loved my dog Prissy. I don't know. He never hung out with the other one. So my clairvoyance would pop and I would see him on my dog Prissy. Well, one day I look over and Prissy's laying on the couch and he is sitting on the couch with her. But so he'll disappear really fast, right? Because the clairvoyance and then, but my husband at the time, my late husband, he was smoking and he had the sliding glass door open so he could like smoke and blow the smoke out because it was winter. And that gnome, that gnome turned into this big dust ball orb. Flew down because I saw him on the dog and I went, because it just surprised me. And he turned into this dusty ball orb, flew down the hallway and came flying back and flew out the door. And my husband goes, what the hell was that? I was like, you seen it. You seen it.
Oh my
So yeah,
gosh.
Thomas my gnome. And you know what? I haven't seen him since I moved from Michigan. So I don't know if he just belonged to the house or what.
Well, the fact that gnome came through and Faye came through, out of all the light languages I could speak to you, because I kept saying, well, I'm just gonna, like I said, it just kept coming up in my throat chakra, and I was like, okay, I just have to speak it. So it was like, yeah, they're coming, but I don't know. That's crazy, Brendaline. The fact that of all of them that I picked, like those two come through, and then you tell me this story, and I didn't even know this story.
You can't make this stuff up. I'm telling you. This is why I love teaching psychic and mediumship development, which is like you did that, and then look where you've gone.
Yeah.
Like that was just like that was just like the tip of the iceberg for you. And now, like you're this author. Well, I think you were an author back then too, but
yeah, I had written my own book when I first started with you just that year, but the several other books that I've written, plus this one that's a collaboration, was really kind of, it was one of those things where I channeled the messages. I would channel them at 3 o'clock in the morning. I had no idea what they meant. I was like, well, this isn't how I talk. So I would write them down. In fact, I used to tell them, could you just slow down? Because I cannot write this fast. And I'm not going to know what this means when I wake up in the morning. So I'd write it down, I'd leave it, and the next day I'd rewrite it so that I could see it clearly. And this, like I said, went on for 6 months. And then I put it in this little red book and I left it. And I had no idea what it would mean until I met Dina. And when I met Dina, Dina was all about dragons and all about fairies and all about art. And she's like a little child, she's sneaky and kind of, fun to play with. And she's so beautiful. And I said, well, let's collaborate. And she's like, oh, let's do cards. And I said, no. It's supposed to be something else. And I said, we'll do a book around the art and the words. And so we matched it. Then Nora Harold was supposed to come in and be the third author from the Gaia Network. She was one that did Extra Dimensionals. And she was all set to go. And here's the funny thing. I'm putting the manuscript together. And for my subconscious wrote Lily Lee's message. And when I sent it to Dina to review, she's like, do you know you wrote Lily's name in there? And I went, what? She goes, yeah, my subconscious had just said, no, this is the person you're supposed to work with. Literally, Nora pulled out for whatever reasons. I think she got guided to pull out, and Lily came in immediately. And so it was Lily who was supposed to be the third author. And she writes in there. So she speaks, I don't know how many different dialects, and she does a lot of healing through that. You can find her on TikTok, but she's, it was just like all the codes. So we talked a lot about Jamie Price and about the codes. And then the book itself is not a book you read. It's a book you experience.
That's what it sounds like.
You read it, like you read the channel messages, you look at the art, because each message is giving you the empowerment to believe in what you're doing. to believe in who you are, to understand that you're more sovereign than you realize. You're a fractal of source. You're not just this person who's a housewife or a girlfriend. You are so powerful. And then you look at the art, and the art is attached to it, like the tulip portal, and the Palladians, and then there's the lotus, like just each of them. And then right in before that all starts, there's Lily's messages of self-empowerment, self-connection, with the code. So yeah, but it's crazy that we've met today, and I've said what I've said to you. So those messages are for you, Brandely.
I'm open to receive them. I can't wait to listen to them again. What is the name of your podcast?
So the podcast is called The Transformational Soul Talks. I started it in 2020. It's on Spotify. And I'm in the transition of putting it on YouTube because, like I said earlier, I had decided to stream it on a few different platforms, Roku, Apple TV, but it wasn't for me. It didn't have the vibe that I thought I wanted for it. So I decided to go in a different direction. But yeah, I mean, you can find great podcasts on there from like Jamie, from Gita, from an amazing guy, Dallin, who had this spiritual experience, and he's just incredible. And just regular people who've gone through their shit and come out on the other side, and have made it and not given up and not, fallen off. They've just, something has pushed them through. And that's what it's about. It's about understanding that if you take the challenge and you transform your life, then share that story, because you might be able to support someone else out there who's trying to figure out how to get through it, but just doesn't know, listens to that podcast and goes, damn, okay, I know what I got to do. I can take a step in this direction now. Right.
Yeah. I love that you said that. And I love that when you said, when you decided to come back, that you're like, okay, I'm going to fire up the podcast. And it felt so good, because that's exactly what I did. I started my podcast back up way before I started like promoting any programs or anything like that, because it felt good. And I love having people like you on here and connecting and sharing, connecting people. It's really about connecting people. And like you said, somebody's going to listen to one of these episodes and be like, there's keys to, these other resources, or listening to this, like there's hope for me, or I want to find out more about light language.
Sorry.
No,
my crazy phone.
Yeah.
There we go.
So for those of you guys that aren't watching, her video just went off, but that's cool. Yeah, I put mine on YouTube as well. I just use Zoom here, and we load it up to all the audio and then and Zoom. So all you guys too, I'll be dropping links to like her book and her podcast, her website, all that in the show notes. Yeah,
it's been an incredible journey, and I'm really glad we got to share, and I'm very excited you're going to come on mine and you get to share, and who knows what'll come out when we're talking again. So
I know, spirit lead the way. Spirit lead the way. So right now you got the book, the podcast. Are you coaching? What do you do? Are you doing?
Yeah. So I'm still coaching and not facilitating a little bit, but I mean, it still isn't back to where it used to be. So a lot of it is done online. Discovering Your Blueprint is one of my programs. And then something that I started in 2021, built the whole program, did nothing after my son put it out there, but it wasn't right. And I remember having this conversation with Georgia Jean. And when I tapped in with her circle of evolution, they said, it is not in the collective consciousness right now, but it will be. And once it is, then it was like they were saying, just wait. So I think I talked about this when I first met you. I have studied and lived numerology for over 35 years. My father was the one who changed all our names and guided our life by it when we were kids, like 15, 14 years old. And I always used it to guide my life. And so now I notice that there's a little bit of misinformation I see out there on some social platforms, which kind of bothers me, because numerology is very intricate and there's a lot that can affect you. And so I was like, you know what, I'd like to share, and I think I'm going to be doing it, putting it out on TikTok to really share how numerology actually works, because there's a couple of people out there that are like, oh, if you're a 7, you're 11. Well, that's great. You can be all those numbers. You can be, your soul chooses to come into this lifetime to express something. But there are so many other factors that can actually alter that path, that can shift what you want to do. So I've used it as a guide. I don't live it day to day, but it does guide my life. So that's something I'm going to be bringing back out, because now it's in the collective consciousness. Everybody knows about it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And so you're still teaching your blueprint class though.
I am still teaching that. Yes, it's called yeah. So it teaches you to recognize and rewrite that, and then realign that. And I actually just did that with my daughter the other day by teaching her how to rewrite how she felt about something. And I actually put it out on LinkedIn and Instagram, and I haven't put it on Facebook. Just understanding that when you sort of continuously tell yourself the same thing, you can't do this, you can't do that, and she was trying to look for a job, I said, then it's not going to happen. But I said, remember the emotion and the energy that you went in when you got those other jobs that you loved. And she goes, yeah, I remember that. And I said, okay, it's that emotion and that determination that you have to shift back into. And then that excitement, it will show up, or something even better. So I said, it's just a slight shift in your emotion and energy, and just a slight shift in your perspective. When you do that, it's unlimited what you can achieve. So
I love that you shared that. My assistant, she'll do that with me sometimes when I'm down a little bit on my business, and she'll be like, wait, look at it this way. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so successful. What was I thinking? Why was I thinking that? It's like just that one little shift.
yes.
And then with your, like you're saying, then if I operate in that space, in that energy, then you're going to receive what it is
Yes.
that you really want.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And just and this is what I was saying to people is, you know how people like to create goals, and they like to set dates, and I said, no. You sit, you can be detailed in how you feel and the emotion you feel with it, but vague in the details of exactly, like, you know how people say, oh, I want this to happen, I want a job just like this, and it's got to be this way and that way, I want this guy to be this way and that way, or I want my car to be this way and that way. And I would say be careful, because the ego mind is limited in what it can actually expand and believe, whereas your higher self and the universe can give you something way fucking better. Sorry, I swear, but you know what I'm saying?
We say fuck
So
on here.
so understand that when you sit in that emotion and you feel the feelings and you see it and you feel good and you smile and you're daydreaming and you see yourself doing whatever it is you're doing, the universe has already grabbed that energy and has started to form it into matter. But if you start putting limitations on it by, oh, but this car has to have this and this and this, that's when it kind of goes, ooh, and it brings it back down. So this is why I say be careful what you want. Be specific in the emotions, but vague in the details. So you can say you want something, but not get so specific. And after we finish, I'll share something with you. So it's a little personal, but yeah.
So it's specific in the emotions and vague
in the detail. So let's say, for example, you say you want a car, and you're like, I would like the car to be, you know, seat this many people. I'd like it to have good fuel economy, and I want it to be a really, you know, comfortable ride. Like, those are fine. And then just see yourself in it. See yourself driving down, whether it's a Jeep or it's a car or an SUV, whatever it is. And when you just see yourself in it, then that vehicle will show up exactly what is meant for you, probably better than your ego mind can actually perceive.
Right. I love it. I love this.
So
I would love for you to share my favorite story that you have told a couple times. And then somehow I was reading a book and read it in that book, and I remember messaging you and said, I read the actual story, and it's about the lady that's trying to cook the freaking meat and put it in the pan, and she cuts the edges of the ham off.
Okay. Yes. So I believe it's in my Your Prosperity Blueprint, which is the book my first book that I wrote. So basically the story is this: there was a husband and wife, and they were cooking their ham. And the husband said to the wife, "Why do you cut the ends of the ham off?" And she said, "I don't know, hon. I just do it because that's what my mother did." And he said, "Well, okay, let's call your mother and ask her then." So they called her mother and they said, "Why do you cut the ends of the ham off?" And she said, "Well, I don't know. That's the way grandma always taught me, my mom." So she said, "That's why I've always done it." So they said, "Okay." Fortunately, grandma was still alive at the time. So they called her and they said, "Why do you cut the ends of the ham off?" And she said, "Oh, well, that's because I didn't have a big enough pot for the ham to fit in. So I just cut the ends off to make it fit." And the moral of that story is something that basically something that worked at one time does not mean you have to carry it on through to this current moment. And this is what I've shared with my children. If something I've taught you doesn't resonate, and you're like, "This is kind of BS, mom," then don't do it. Do what feels good to you. Go with your own story. Go with your own feeling. Just because it's done there doesn't mean you have to keep doing it. That's why I'm a little bit against the handing down of the traditions if there's something that's not positive, right? If it's something that's nice, you make a nice embroidery, that's fine. But if it's something that's maybe not so nice, then really you have to look at, well, why was that handed down? Who started that? Does it serve you today? If not, let it go.
Yeah. We could talk about this too with mindset, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
things get passed on through the generations, right? And so maybe your grandparents were in the depression, and you're still
Mm-hmm.
acting as if, like food hoarding or whatever, you know what I mean? Like there's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't serve you. Yeah.
It's true, and you will see that sometimes you have to. I could tell a million stories, but I know specifically of one person that is very frugal to the point of cheap. Why? Because something traumatic happened to her as a child, and because of that, she now like literally holds on to money as if it was her life support, because it was at one time, and her family lost everything and they had nothing. And so she holds on to it. But the thing is, that needs to be let go of, because in order for her to have more abundance and not feel like that, she has to let go of that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I just love having you on the podcast. Tell everybody, where can they find you?
So you could find me at rochelleharlington.ca. I'm on LinkedIn, Raschell Harlingten. TikTok is still Roots for Success, but on Instagram it's Rochelle, and of course Facebook it's Rochelle. So
Yeah, connect with her, you guys. Learn
I'd,
more about this light language stuff too. I dig it. This was fun. This was a great episode. Thank you so
thank you.
much for being on here.
Thank you.